You won't believe how these lottery winners turn their dream fortunes into tragic nightmares. But what went wrong after hitting the jackpot? Let's uncover their stories. Number 13. Jane Park. $1.27 million or £1 million. In 2013, Jane Park's life took an unexpected turn when, at just 17 years old, she won $1.27 million in the Euro Millions lottery. For someone who had been earning a modest wage at an office job, this win seemed like a ticket to a dream life. However, Jane's story is a testament to how sudden wealth at a young age can be overwhelming and potentially harmful. Initially, Jane did what many would dream of doing with £1 million. Her first big purchase was a Louis Vuitton handbag, a symbol of the luxury lifestyle she now thought she could lead. She went on to splurge on expensive cars, luxurious holidays, and even plastic surgery. But as the excitement of extravagant spending wore off, Jane found herself grappling with feelings of depression and loneliness. The lifestyle she had thought would bring her happiness was instead leaving her unfulfilled and isolated. Jane's experience highlights the complexities that come with winning a large sum of money, particularly for someone so young. Without the maturity and guidance to manage such a windfall, the joy of winning can quickly turn into a burden. Jane herself expressed that she felt the money had brought more problems than solutions, even suggesting at one point that the legal age for playing the lottery should be raised. Our next tale in the series unveils yet another unique and intriguing perspective on the life-changing effects of a lottery win. Number 12. Denise Rossi. $1.3 million. Denise Rossi's life took an unexpected turn when she won a staggering $1.3 million in the lottery. In a twist that defies the typical lottery win story, Denise chose to keep her windfall a secret, not even sharing the news with her husband Thomas. They'd been married for 25 years, but faced with the sudden prospect of wealth, Denise's decision set off a chain of events that turned her fortune into a misadventure. Instead of joy, the lottery win brought deception into Denise's marriage. Shortly after her win, she filed for divorce, offering no explanation to her bewildered husband. It was only during the divorce proceedings that Thomas discovered the truth about the lottery win. Denise had hoped to keep the entire prize for herself, but her plan backfired dramatically. The law has a way of catching up with dishonesty, and in Denise's case, it did just that. Her failure to disclose the lottery win in the divorce was deemed fraudulent. In a striking turn of events, the judge awarded all of her lottery winnings to her ex-husband. It was a harsh lesson in honesty and the consequences of deceit. If this story has left you amazed, the next lottery winner's tale is another eye-opener, with twists and turns that are equally as unexpected. Number 11. Ibi Ranchioli. $5 million. In 2003, Ibi Ranchioli's life changed dramatically when she won a staggering $5 million in the lottery. Living in Ontario with her husband, Dr. Joseph Ranchioli, they seemed like a well-off, happy couple. But as it often happens, the lottery win brought more than just financial gain. It brought secrets and turmoil to the surface. Ibi's decision on how to manage her winnings was the first twist in her story. Instead of lavish spending sprees, she quietly gave away a huge portion of the money to a secret son, a decision that would have significant consequences. Her husband, unaware of this son, was shocked to find their life savings drastically diminished. This revelation shook the foundation of their 30-year marriage. Arguments ensued, trust was broken, and their relationship, once solid, was now on rocky ground. But the story takes an even darker turn. In 2003, Ibi was found dead in their upscale home. Initially thought to be natural causes, an autopsy revealed something far more sinister. Her body showed needle marks and high levels of drugs. The investigation pointed towards Joseph, who claimed he was checking her for blood due to her poor health. However, the evidence told a different story, and he was eventually sentenced to prison. What appeared to be a stroke of good fortune turned into a series of tragic events, leading to a once happy home being shattered by greed, secrets, and ultimately death. Brace yourself for the next story, which is even more intriguing. Number 10. Doris Murray, $5 million. In 2005, Doris Murray's life took an unexpected turn when she won a remarkable $5 million in the Georgia State Lottery. Unlike many who might have splashed out on extravagances, Doris chose the path of modesty and foresight. A mother of 4, her plan was simple yet noble: to set up a trust fund for her grandchildren, ensuring their future was secure. She opted for yearly installments of $172,000 over 20 years, a decision reflecting her careful and thoughtful approach to newfound wealth. However, the dream soon turned into a nightmare. Tragedy struck just a year after her win. Doris was found dead in her home in Dublin, Georgia. The culprit? Her former boyfriend, Derek Lorenzo Stanley. The story goes that after a heated argument and a failed attempt to end their relationship, Stanley, in a fit of rage, took Doris's life. The police, alerted by family members who saw Stanley leaving her apartment with blood on his face, arrested him after a tense car chase. Doris's story shows how money, even when handled wisely, can't shield us from life's darker elements. Her intentions were good, her plans solid, but her life was cut short in a brutal twist of fate. The lottery win that should have been a blessing for her and her family became a backdrop to a tragic ending. This story isn't just about the loss of a lottery winner, it's about the unforeseen impacts of sudden wealth on personal relationships and security. If the unsettling story of Doris Murray's fate has captured your attention, the next winner's experience will also leave a lasting impression. Number 9. Evelyn Bazer, $5.4 million. In the mid-1980s, Evelyn Bazer's life seemed to be touched by extraordinary luck. She won the lottery not once, but twice within a span of 4 months. The first win in 1985 brought her $3.9 million, and soon after, another $1.4 million followed. To many, this would seem like the ultimate stroke of good fortune, a rare twist of fate that could solve all of life's problems. However, Evelyn's story is a stark illustration that money doesn't guarantee a happy ending. Evelyn, perhaps believing in her seemingly unending luck, took her winnings to the casinos. She gambled, hoping to multiply her fortune, driven by the same luck that had twice made her a millionaire. But as it often happens in the world of gambling, her winning streak ended. The casinos, which once seemed like gateways to greater riches, became black holes, absorbing her lottery fortune. Her financial misadventures didn't just stop at gambling losses. Evelyn's life after the lottery became a cautionary tale of how quickly fortune can slip through one's fingers. The last reports on Evelyn painted a picture of a drastic reversal of fortune. From a double lottery winner to living in a trailer park and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. If you think this is tragic, wait till you check out the next person on the list. Number 8. Victoria Zell, $11 million. In 2001, Victoria Zell's life took a dramatic turn when she and her then-husband won an $11 million jackpot from the Minnesota Powerball. You'd think this would be the start of a happy new chapter, but for Victoria, it was the beginning of a tragic downfall. Instead of bringing joy and stability, the money led her down a path of self-destruction. Victoria's story is not one of lavish spending or extravagant purchases, but rather of personal turmoil. Within 4 years of the win, she found herself entangled in legal troubles, including charges for possessing methamphetamine. But the real turning point came in 2005, marking a devastating low in her life. After a day filled with drinking and cocaine use, Victoria decided to take her friends on a reckless drive, proclaiming she would show them how to drive crazy. The result was catastrophic. The SUV rolled over, leading to the tragic death of one passenger and leaving another permanently paralyzed. For Victoria, the lottery win that should have been a blessing quickly turned into a curse. Her subsequent sentence of 7.5 years in prison was a stark contrast to the life of luxury she might have imagined when she first won. If the tragic tale of Victoria Zell has left you reflecting on the unpredictable nature of fortune, the journey of the next lottery winner is just as compelling. Number 7. Keith Goff, $11.4 million or £9 million. In 2005, Keith Goff couldn't believe his luck when he won $11.4 million in the lottery. He thought his life was set, but it turned out to be the start of a downward spiral. Keith went on a spending spree, buying racehorses, fancy cars, and throwing big parties. It seemed fun at first, but the money went as quickly as it came. His love for horse racing became a costly addiction. Soon, Keith's life wasn't just about luxury anymore, it was about losing control. The constant spending and his new lifestyle put a strain on his marriage. After a while, his wife had enough and left him. This hit Keith hard. He thought the lottery win was a dream come true, but it turned into a nightmare. The worst part was, his health started to suffer. The stress from all the changes, the loss of his wife, and the way he was living took a toll on him. In the end, Keith's story is a sad one. He passed away, a clear example of how a big win can lead to big problems. If you think Keith's story is shocking, wait until you hear about the next winner who faced even more trouble after their lottery win. Number 6. Michael Carroll, $12.3 million or £9.7 million. In 2002, Michael Carroll's life turned upside down when, at the tender age of 19, he won a massive £9.7 million, $12.3 million USD, in the UK National Lottery. You might think winning such a fortune at a young age would set him up for a life of ease and comfort. However, Michael's story is a stark reminder that wealth without wisdom can lead to ruin. From the moment he claimed his prize, Michael embarked on a wild spending spree. He purchased a luxurious mansion and customized it extravagantly, even building a demolition derby racetrack in the back garden. His days began with cocaine and vodka, and his nights were filled with lavish parties that seemed to never end. He lived a life that many would see in a rock star, not a teenage lottery winner. But the high life had a steep price. His excessive lifestyle not only drained his fortune, but also alienated his family and friends. The people who cared about him couldn't stand to watch him spiral out of control and gradually distance themselves. His wife and child, unable to cope with his reckless behavior, left him. As the money ran out, so did the people who once surrounded him for his wealth. His fortune, instead of bringing happiness and security, led him down a path of self-destruction. From a multi-millionaire to being broke, his journey is an example of how money can be as fleeting as it is enticing. As we absorb the lessons from Michael's tumultuous experience, the next story in our series reveals yet another unexpected twist in the life of a lottery winner. Number 5. Connie Parker, $25 million. In 2003, Connie Parker's life changed dramatically when she won a substantial $25 million in the lottery. Most people dream of sharing such a windfall with their loved ones, but Connie's story took a different turn. Instead of joy and unity, her lottery win became a source of discord and division, particularly with her husband, Kenneth. Rather than bringing them closer, the lottery win drove a wedge between Connie and Kenneth. Connie decided not to share her winnings with her husband. In a surprising move, she purchased a new condo with her lottery money and locked Kenneth out. This act marked the beginning of the end for their marriage, leading to a bitter and contentious divorce. Kenneth, feeling betrayed and hurt, took legal action against Connie. He sued her, and the court battle resulted in a $3 million settlement in his favor. However, the story doesn't have a happy ending for Kenneth either. Less than a year after the settlement, he passed away from cancer, adding a layer of tragedy to this tale of lottery fortune. The next winner's life was a dream turned nightmare too. Number 4. David Lee Edwards, $27 million. In 2001, David Lee Edwards' life took a dramatic turn when he won a massive $27 million in the Kentucky Powerball. Coming from a background marked by struggles and legal troubles, this win seemed like a miraculous turnaround. However, David's story soon unfolded as a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of rapid and reckless wealth. With newfound riches in hand, David embarked on a spending spree of epic proportions. He splurged on luxury cars, a mansion, and an array of extravagant items, from medieval armor collections to high-end electronics. His lifestyle became a public spectacle of opulence and excess. But the glamour and excitement were short-lived. Within a year, David had spent an astonishing $12 million, a rate of expenditure that was unsustainable by any measure. As the money dwindled, so did David's health and relationships. His unchecked spending led to deep debt, and his reckless lifestyle resulted in severe health issues. The man who once had everything was facing the stark reality of losing it all. By 2006, his fortune was gone. His marriage had fallen apart, and he found himself living in destitution. However, the next person on our list had a similar fate. Number 3. Billy Bob Harrell Jr. $31 million. In 2003, Billy Bob Harrell Jr.'s life transformed when he won a staggering $31 million in the Texas Lotto. Initially, it seemed like a blessing for Billy Bob, who had been struggling with low-paying jobs and supporting his family. The first of his $1.24 million annual payouts appeared to be a beacon of hope. He indulged in the newfound wealth, quitting his job, taking his family on a Hawaiian vacation, and generously donating to his church and community. But Billy Bob's story is a poignant example of how a windfall can lead to unexpected challenges. His generosity, while admirable, opened a floodgate of requests for help. He started receiving constant calls from strangers asking for money, leading to a loss of privacy and peace. Moreover, he made a financially disastrous deal with a company that offered lump sum payments in exchange for annual lottery checks, significantly reducing his total winnings. Within a year, the pressure and the drastic change in his lifestyle began to take a toll. Billy Bob and his wife Barbara Jean separated, a clear sign that the lottery win was bringing more stress than joy. Tragically, in 1999, nearly 2 years after his lottery win, Billy Bob was found dead in his home from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His fortune, which was supposed to be a source of happiness, had become a burden too heavy to bear. If you think this was tragic, wait till you hear about the next lottery winner. Number 2. Rachel Kennedy and Liam McCrohan. $250.3 million, or 228 million euros. In 2021, Rachel Kennedy and Liam McCrohan, a young British couple, thought they had hit the jackpot, literally. Rachel had been playing the same numbers on her Euro Millions lottery tickets every week, and one fateful week, their numbers finally came up. The prize? A jaw-dropping $250.3 million. The couple was ecstatic, dreaming of all the ways their lives were about to change. They started planning the things they'd buy, the places they'd see. It was the kind of windfall you hear about in fairy tales. But their fairy tale was short-lived. When Rachel checked her online ticket, something was off. The ticket, which should have been their golden ticket to a new life, wasn't there. Confused and worried, they contacted the lottery officials and received the shock of their lives. Due to a payment error, their ticket hadn't actually been purchased. They had all the right numbers, but no ticket to claim the prize. It was a heartbreaking realization. From being on top of the world to having their dreams shattered in an instant, the emotional roller coaster must have been intense. This story isn't just about a missed opportunity. It's about the fragility of luck and how quickly fortune can turn. If the story of Rachel and Liam's almost win has caught your attention, wait till you hear about the next winner, whose lottery journey took an entirely different turn. Number 1. Andrew Jack Whitaker. $315 million. In 2002, Andrew Jack Whitaker, already a millionaire, struck gold with a whopping $315 million Powerball win. You'd think a man with his wealth would have it all figured out, but his fortune soon became misfortune. Andrew's story isn't just about losing money. It's about how a huge win can turn life upside down. After the win, Andrew started off with good intentions, setting up a foundation to help others. But money like that brings its own set of problems. First came the thieves. Not once, but multiple times, they broke into his car, stealing hundreds of thousands. It's as if his lottery win was a magnet for trouble. And it didn't stop there. His granddaughter, whom he loved dearly, got caught up in the wrong crowd and substances. Sadly, she passed away, leaving Andrew and his family in deep sorrow. But the tragedies kept piling up. His daughter also passed away under tragic circumstances. Andrew's fortune, which seemed like a blessing, was turning his life into a series of heartbreaks. He said it himself once that winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And you can see why. His family was torn apart, and he faced one personal loss after another. The money that was supposed to bring happiness instead brought grief and misfortune. Andrew ended up in legal troubles and financial disputes. The once multi-million-dollar fortune dwindled rapidly. It's a harsh reminder that money, especially a sudden windfall, can bring unexpected and sometimes unwelcome changes to life. As we've just witnessed, hitting the lottery jackpot can sometimes lead to more than just financial gain. It can bring unforeseen challenges and heartache. These 13 stories are harsh reminders that wealth can have unexpected consequences. Curious about how other winners handled their wins smartly? Be sure to catch our next video.
I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person, but got people coming up asking.
We all dream about hitting the jackpot someday. It will make us happy, right?
I want you to deal with your problems by becoming rich.
But you might want to think again after hearing the disastrous stories of some lotto winners. Sadly, many lotto winner stories actually end tragically. From lotto winners who never got paid to people who didn't know how to manage their wealth, these lotto stories are simply mind-blowing. Rachel Kennedy. Take a look at this 19-year-old. She thought she had it all, but it's unbelievable how life can throw you under the bus in a split second. Rachel Kennedy is a university student, and she couldn't believe it when her numbers appeared on a Euro Millions draw for a prize of $182 million. The 19-year-old from Hertfordshire called her mother and boyfriend Liam McCrowan into the room, where the three imagined how the teen's life might change after that. However, a call to lottery bosses Camelot immediately ended the fantasy, leaving business undergraduate Rachel absolutely heartbroken. It was a system bug that played with her dreams. A bug sent her an alert the next day naming her the winner. The ticket was not purchased automatically prior to the draw, and unfortunately, it had not been accepted. Camelot gave Rachel the best of luck in future draws after she went public with a heartbreakingly unlucky close call. I called the number thinking I had won $182 million, and they said, yeah, you've got the right numbers, but you didn't have the funds in your account for the payment of the ticket, so it didn't actually go through, the teenager explained. I was overjoyed when I believed I had won, but when I found out I hadn't, Liam was even more disappointed than I was. When she checked her account, she was surprised with a notice stating that her numbers were a winning match. Her heart had sunk, she recounted, when she discovered the issue shortly thereafter. Camelot stated in March of last year, "We're aware of Rachel's story and hope she gets in early to buy a ticket for the next big draw." That's one way to get heartbroken, but not as broken as the next guy, who lost his house, wife, daughter, and granddaughter after hitting the jackpot. Andrew Jack Whitaker. When Virginia native Jack Whitaker won big in 2002, he was already a billionaire. He chose a $113 million lump sum settlement, but ended up overpaying and making numerous disastrous investments. At one point, he was even robbed. After 5 years, all of the earnings had vanished. You might be wondering how something like this can happen. Andrew Whitaker Jr. won the lottery on Christmas in 2002 and had his 15 minutes of fame, but it rapidly wore off and things went downhill. Whitaker became an overnight sensation after winning the greatest U.S. lottery payout with a single ticket at the time. But it all began to crumble when the businessman and his family took up a private plane to appear on morning news shows to discuss his win and the $113.4 million lump sum award. However, things quickly turned sour. He was charged with DUI twice and sued several times, including once by 3 female casino employees who accused him of abuse. His family has also suffered a number of unfortunate deaths. Whitaker's drinking and gambling problems worsened, and he and his wife divorced. In 2004, a friend of his substance-abused granddaughter was discovered dead at his home. But the series of misfortunes were not over for Whitaker. His daughter, Ginger Whitaker Bragg, passed away in 2009 at the age of 42 following a long fight with cancer. "I wish I'd torn that ticket up," Whitaker remarked shortly after his daughter passed away. Whitaker suffered a home fire in Virginia in 2016. He was also the victim of several burglaries. Thieves stole a total of $100,000 from him at various times. And when the day came for his last breath at the age of 72, Whitaker was broke and miserable. It seems like some people aren't supposed to handle money, just like the next guy, who lost every penny of the $27 million after a major shopping spree and a substance abuse problem. David Lee Edwards. David Lee Edwards of Kentucky spent the majority of his $27 million win in less than 5 years on a home, expensive automobiles, a Learjet, and huge doses of narcotics. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 58, impoverished and alienated from his wife. David Lee Edwards of Ashland, Kentucky, was a convicted offender. He initially made the news in 2001 when he won $27 million in the Powerball lottery, which he referred to at the time as a poor man's dream. "I've made mistakes in the past, but they were a long time ago. I paid for my mistakes, and I went on with my life, and I straightened out my life, and I've been productive ever since," Edwards said after his 2001 victory. "I am who I am today because of God, and I am grateful. I can't undo the past, but I can make a difference in the future." But unfortunately, he wasn't true to his words. Edwards eventually spent the money on luxury items such as an enormous automobile collection and a $1.6 million mansion in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And by 2006, he had spent all of his earnings. Edwards spent a third of his life in prison due to armed robbery charges before winning the jackpot. Edwards appeared to have it all after winning the lottery, but after a major shopping spree and a substance addiction battle, he lost everything. "If he followed my advice, he'd be pulling in about $85,000 per month for the rest of his life," Edwards' financial advisor James Gibbs said. After Edwards' victory, Gibbs had placed Edwards' money in stocks and bonds, but instead of leaving it there, he used it to fund his luxurious lifestyle. Then in December 2013, at the age of 58, he passed away broken and all alone. Unfortunately, that is the sad reality of life. Like they say, always expect the unexpected, just like the next story. Coming up is Michael Hill, who went as far as to kill his wife after hitting the jackpot. Michael Todd Hill. In 2007, Michael Hill won $10 million in an Ultimate Millions scratch-off ticket purchased at a convenience store in North Carolina. Hill was charged with the crime of killing his wife 13 years later in 2020 and told the court he was impoverished and couldn't afford counsel. He was sentenced to life in prison for the demise of 23-year-old Kiana Graham. According to the state lottery administrator, Hill played an Extreme Millions scratch-off ticket at a petrol station in North Carolina and came up short in August 2017. That year, he went back to the cashier and opted to play Ultimate Millions instead. "I joked with her. 'How come you didn't sell me a winning ticket?' Hill stated. He went back to his car and began scratching in the parking lot. It didn't take long for him to realize he had a winning ticket. 'When I got to the dollar symbol, I knew I had won something,' he explained in 2017. 'I saw 1, then 0, and it still didn't hit me.' Hill returned inside and inquired about the ticket. 'She told me, sir, I think you just won $10 million. He explained to the state lottery. He immediately called his wife to inform her of the life-changing news. 'I told her to pack her bags because we just won $10 million. According to the lottery, Hill agreed to accept a flat sum of $6 million, which amounted to a little above $4 million after state and federal tax withholdings. He stated that his plan was to pay off debts and invest in his wife's business. Now, it's time to meet his wife, Kiana Graham. Hill was almost 3 years later in the midst of an 18-month relationship with Graham, but they had a history of domestic issues, a dark red flag. When her daughter failed to show up for work as a prison officer at Pender Correctional Institution, Graham's mother filed a missing persons complaint on July 20th, 2020. On the same day the report was submitted, the maids at the Shore Stay Hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina, entered room 310 and discovered Graham on a bed with a single shot wound to the head. Authorities believe Graham was sleeping when she was fatally shot with a .45 caliber handgun. Hill ultimately admitted to police that Graham met her tragic end by him while she was messaging males at the hotel. Isn't it crazy what money can do to a sane man? The same thing happened in the next story, where a man called William Post had to sleep with one eye open, scared for his life after hitting the jackpot. William Bud Post. William Post won $16.2 million in 1988, but things swiftly went south. Post won the prize while playing a lottery game in Pennsylvania. He was $1 million in debt just a year after winning the lottery. How can a millionaire be $1 million in debt, you might ask? When he won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery in 1988, he went on a buying binge that included residences, boats, and a plane he wasn't certified to fly. Post was not just broke again, but also one horrifying $1 million in debt just a year later. Post's brother was also jailed for hiring a hitman to assassinate him. Post ended up declaring bankruptcy, doing time in jail for pointing a gun at a debt collector, and being duped out of a third of his money by his landlord. Everybody dreams of winning money, but nobody realizes the nightmares that come out of the woodwork or the problems, Post said, and wise words have never been spoken. He passed away in 2006 at the age of 66 while living on disability payments, leaving behind his 7th wife and 9 children. Have you ever heard the story of a lottery winner who got shot the next day of issuing the ticket? Don't go anywhere because that is coming up next. Uruj Khan. A lottery winner who had a massive $1 million reward met his tragic end just weeks after purchasing a winning scratch-off ticket. His name was Uruj Khan, who immigrated to the United States from India, established a dry cleaning business with his wife in Chicago's West Rogers Park area. With a scratch-off lottery ticket, he won $1 million. He chose to receive it in the form of a $600,000 lump sum, which, after taxes, amounted to more than $424,000. But just one day after his lottery check was issued, but before he received it, the 46-year-old was found demised. He passed away from cyanide poisoning. Khan's estate included the lottery check, was divided between his wife and her now estranged stepdaughter after a protracted probate struggle. So did Khan meet his tragic end by the hands of his wife? Was that a ploy to own his assets and wealth? Miraj Khan, his sister, remains certain that her brother's wife and father-in-law were involved in her brother's death, calling it an open and shut case. Babana Ansari, the wife, is following her attorney's advice not to talk, but she has previously denied any involvement in the tragedy. Her father has done the same. Unfortunately, the unresolved issue left Miraj Khan's family feeling helpless and anguished. Honestly, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him, she said of her brother. Each and every day. When I look at my niece and remember things we did, I get the impression he's saying to me, "How come you're not doing anything about it?" That is indeed a sad story. Coming up next is a lovely lady whose life got absolutely thrashed by the insane amounts of money. Mac W. Metcalf. A couple who received a multi-million-dollar windfall and eventually met their demise a few years later. In 2000, a $34 million lottery prize was won by Mac Metcalf and his divorced wife, Virginia G. Merida. They rapidly gathered their money and started splurging on expensive goods. The couple probably felt that anything was within their financial range when they were previously concerned with paying their monthly bills and timely apartment payment. Metcalf found fulfillment in a Southern Kentucky residence designed to resemble George Washington's Mount Vernon home and several classic vehicles. Merida decided to buy a Mercedes-Benz and live with numerous cats in a home close to the Ohio River. The lottery winners, however, soon had problems after a brief time of relaxation brought on by the sudden infusion of money. In 2003, just 3 years after their victory, Metcalf and Merida both passed very quickly. Merida was found dead in her bed by her son, Metcalf, who passed away from complications due to his drinking. Police stated that they did not have any suspicions of wrongdoing at the time Merida passed away, likely from a substance overdose. According to rumors, Metcalf had been into legal issues multiple times before he passed away. The two had purchased a $3 ticket at a truck stop in Florence, Kentucky, and by coincidence won $34.1 million in 2000. The couple's friends and family said that the deaths of the two were caused by significant sums of money being given to individuals who had personal problems and no prior expertise handling such a lot. A lottery lawyer stated, if he hadn't won, he would have worked like regular people and might have had 20 years left. But if you give someone with difficulties that much money, it merely encourages them to kill themselves. Similar sentiments were expressed by David Huff, the buyer who eventually acquired the Mount Vernon-style house from the Metcalf's estate. It was a textbook example of a person who had never had wealth and didn't know how to deal with it, according to Huff. I believe that once he received the money, things only got worse. Well, I can't agree more to that statement. Some say that the best decision after hitting the jackpot is to hire a financial advisor. But in the next story, that advice proved to be terribly false, which caused the life of an innocent man. Florida man Abraham Shakespeare. In the late 2000s, Shakespeare hit the jackpot and won millions of dollars on a lottery ticket. Abraham Shakespeare is a resident of Florida who won the lotto in November 2006. He won the $30 million prize, but chose the $16.9 million settlement to assist his family and friends. He used the money to purchase his dream home as well as homes for his cousins. Shakespeare also assisted a local hairdresser by repaying $87,000 in business debt. While winning the lottery may appear to be a pipe dream, Shakespeare eventually struggled with the enormous sum of money since he wasn't sure how to manage it. It was frightening because he had no idea how to manage his money. He had an entourage around him, but he didn't know half of them, his cousin Tammy Edom said. They were aware that he couldn't read. They were well aware of his inability to write. They were well aware that he could only sign his name. He was their cash cow, Cedric Odom, his other cousin, continued, and they milked him daily. Shakespeare pulled out of the spotlight after getting advice from a friend, owing to the hoopla surrounding his lotto victory. But here is the terrifying part. Shakespeare went missing 2 years after winning the lotto. He was discovered to have met his demise from a gunshot wound in the backyard of a Florida home after a 3-month search. It's time I introduced you to Moore. Shakespeare and Moore met in 2008 through a mutual acquaintance. Moore agreed to write a book on him to explain his tale at the time, and she later became his financial counselor. She was arrested in February 2010 by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and charged with being an accessory after the fact. But the charge was swiftly raised to first-degree murder in association with the demise of Shakespeare. In December 2012, a Florida jury found her guilty and sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Moore has maintained her innocence over the years, but Florida courts upheld her conviction in 2015 and again in 2019. They eventually labeled her ongoing allegations as confusing, conclusory, and ambiguous. If you are interested, Shakespeare's narrative is featured in the Hulu series Web of Death. Have you seen it? Although he had the greatest luck in the lottery, sadly that luck wasn't there when he needed it. In the next case, this $18 million winner got her luck rubbed out in a completely different situation. Janite Lee. When a lottery winner in Illinois hit a sizable jackpot in 1993, her wishes came true. The 60-year-old Janite Lee took home a stunning $18 million. She divided the prize money into 20 portions totaling $620,000 per year, which she used for charitable causes. In the late 1970s, Lee relocated from South Korea to the United States with her husband and 3 stepchildren. She ran a wig shop in Missouri and donated to several charities after winning. Lee lived the high life for the following 8 years, dining with leaders like President Bill Clinton. But that didn't last for long. After 10 years of funding and distributing donations, combined with credit card debt and occasional gambling, Lee squandered her riches. She left the University of Washington a large portion of her wealth, which was utilized to build a library and a reading room at the law school that bears her name. The amount Lee donated was kept a secret by the university, but a friend of Lee's claimed she gave $1.5 million. When Lee's stepdaughter graduated and she made the parents' honor roll as a Life Elliott benefactor, it was later reported that Lee made a second donation of between $500,000 and $1 million. Unfortunately, Lee's bank account quickly ran dry after she donated large sums of money to educational, political, and social causes. Thus, just 8 years later, Lee had filed for bankruptcy and had less than $700 in a bank account while facing $2.5 million in debt. Isn't it so true that money has the ability to turn around one's life? To be better or worse, that's for you to decide. Coming up next is a couple who hit a whopping $13 million, but ultimately had to file bankruptcy. Alex and Rhoda Toth. This couple only had $24 to their name in May 1990 when they cashed in on a $13 million Florida Lotto jackpot. The couple took their money in payments in the ominous amount of $666,666 until 2010. Over the next few years, the Toths went through various family squabbles and were charged with filing fraudulent income tax returns by the IRS, which ultimately led to bankruptcy filings in 2001 and 2002. Rhoda Toth was quoted as saying that the money has torn us apart and caused the loss of friends and family members. "Sometimes I wish we could give it back," she said. Alex Toth passed away broke and facing federal charges in 2008 at the age of 60. Do you know Americans have only a 1 in 3 billion chance of winning the billion-dollar Mega Millions jackpot? But be aware that nearly 70% of the lottery jackpot winners spend their winnings within 7 years. These incidents serve as examples of the disasters that might result from unexpected and considerable wealth, right? It's clear that the past lottery jackpot winners have met their tragic end, convicted of the same and gone from this world penniless. Why do you think all the lotto winners end up miserable? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.
Number 15. Rachel Kennedy and Liam McCrohan. Rachel Kennedy and Liam McCrohan are a young British couple who won a gigantic lottery jackpot in 2021. Almost. Every week, Rachel played exactly the same numbers on her Euro Millions lottery tickets. She was so dedicated, she'd set up her online lottery account to automatically buy a ticket with those numbers. Then, one week, Rachel and Liam checked the lottery draw and couldn't believe their eyes. The winning numbers for the 228 million euro jackpot matched Rachel's numbers. They immediately started planning how they were going to spend such a gigantic amount of cash. The young couple realized their lives had changed forever. But when Rachel checked her online ticket, she spotted something weird. It wasn't there. She contacted the National Lottery website to find out what happened and got the worst possible news. There had been an error when the automatic ticket purchase was taking place, and the payment never went through. In other words, she didn't have a ticket. They missed out on that mind-blowing sum of money, and there was absolutely nothing they can do about it. It might be the biggest lottery tragedy of all time, but at least their lives didn't change. The next winner lost more than he won. Number 14. Daniel Carley. Canadian Daniel Carley won the Ontario Lottery at the most perfect moment ever. He was just about to marry the woman of his dreams, who also happened to be pregnant with their first child. He had a pretty perfect life already, but when he won an incredible 5 million Canadian dollars, or about 4.4 million US dollars, he was given the kind of financial stability that most new parents can only dream of. And his life would have been perfect if he'd used his money that way. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Instead, he and his friends gathered at his dad's bar for a celebration party. That would have been just fine, but when the party ended, Daniel didn't want to stop, so he didn't. Over the next 10 years, he partied all his money away. It won't surprise you that his young wife left to look after his child in a more stable environment. His friends didn't want to know this out-of-control version of Daniel, so they disappeared from his life too. It wasn't long before he ran out of money, and when that happened, he turned to drugs again. But this time, he was selling them. He was eventually arrested and sent to prison for his crimes. Daniel chose a path that led him to losing his perfect life. But sometimes, lottery winners do everything right, and their story still ends in tragedy. That's what happened to the next winner on our list. Number 13. Francisco Guerrero. Francisco Guerrero had been a hard worker his whole life. He'd worked as a bricklayer in Spain, slowly earning himself enough money to support his family, and even buying more than one house. That's pretty impressive. After all that hard work, it almost feels like he'd earned his lottery win. He hit a jackpot worth about $8.6 million. But he wasn't the partying type, and he didn't know what to do with all that cash. so he figured the most responsible thing to do was to take it to the bank. That's the advice lottery winners are always given, so it sounds like a pretty good decision. The experts at the bank told him to invest 40% of his winnings and put the rest into a savings account for his children. That sounded like a good idea to him, and he left his money in their hands. He continued going to work and lived his life the way he did before winning the lottery. After all, he was pretty happy that way. But then something went wrong. He suffered a serious injury to his knee that meant he needed expensive surgery. Luckily, he had millions in that savings account thanks to his lottery winnings. He went down to the bank to withdraw some of his cash, but he was shocked to discover the account was totally empty. What he learned next would horrify anyone. The bank had put 40% of his winnings into a terrible investment. They told him there were no risks, but they were totally wrong. Not only had they lost his investment, but they'd got him into serious debt. To pay it off, they used all the cash in the savings account meant for his kids, and they'd even lost all the properties he'd earned through hard work. That's the perfect example of how many things can go wrong when you hit the lottery. It's pretty sad when someone loses everything because of someone else's mistake, but this next winner definitely caused their own downfall. Number 12. Evelyn Basor. You could say Evelyn Basor was one of the luckiest people who ever lived. That's because she won the lottery not once, but twice. And her two wins happened within just 4 months of each other. The first win in 1985 was worth a whopping $3.9 million. And the second, the next year, was another $1.4 million. That's a lot of cash now, but it was worth even more then. She could have done nearly anything with it. So what did she choose to do? Well, she took it to the casino. I guess she figured her luck worked for her in the past, and she'd make even more money. But she was wrong. Her winning streak was over, and the last time anyone heard of her, she was living in a trailer park and working 2 jobs to pay for food. That's a pretty irresponsible way to spend your lottery winnings. But she's not the only winner who blew all her cash. Here's another one. Number 11. Michael Carroll. At the tender age of just 19, British teen Michael Carroll won the lottery. He collected the $14 million with a police ankle bracelet still around his leg. That probably gives you a good idea of what happened next. He spent wildly buying a mansion he didn't like and spending even more on fixing it up. He built a demolition derby racetrack in the back garden where he'd destroy luxury cars. He was starting the day with cocaine and vodka for breakfast, and he spent millions on sex parties in the mansion, even though he had a wife and child. Soon, his family and friends had left him because he was behaving so badly. Lucky for him, when he went broke, his wife decided to take pity on him, and she came back. That's a surprisingly happy ending, considering he said he'd be dead by now if he still had the money. But not everyone gets their life back after. Just ask. Number 10. Andrew Jack Whitaker. Andrew Whitaker was living a pretty comfortable life before he won the lottery. He already had $17 million that he'd earned himself. There's no doubt that's impressive. But his fortune skyrocketed when he got lucky and won the lottery too. His win was a gigantic $315 million. You'd think that because he was pretty rich already, he would have known how to keep that money. But fate had other plans. Criminals got the better of him, totally emptying his bank account with several robberies. Within just 4 years, he was totally broke. He'd even lost the millions of dollars he'd had before winning the lottery. He's not the only winner who was taken advantage of. This next winner was also treated pretty badly. Number 9. Callie Rogers. Back in 2003, Callie Rogers was living in foster care and working at a supermarket. Then, she suddenly made headlines when she became the world's youngest ever lottery winner. She was only 16 at the time, but she now had an incredible $2.3 million in the bank. The British teen totally changed her life with that money, but sadly, not in a good way. She started spending it on crazy stuff, with no role models to help her make good decisions. She also developed a drug habit, and her strange lifestyle made her depressed. That led her to spend tons of cash on plastic surgery, hoping to feel a little better about herself. But it didn't help. She said the money made her feel like nobody cared about her because she would buy drinks for people in bars who were only talking to her so they can get a story they could sell to tabloids. She lost every cent she won and now campaigns to try to change the minimum age for lottery players. Luckily, Callie says she's much happier now she doesn't have the money anymore. She's also a proud mom of 3. But what about this next teenage lottery winner? Number 8. Jane Park. Jane Park was earning just $9 an hour at an office job in 2013. It was her birthday, and she decided to treat herself to her first ever lottery ticket. Incredibly, that ticket hit the jackpot. She won the equivalent of 1.3 million thanks to the Euro Millions lottery, and she was only 17 years old. Unfortunately, instead of using it to start her adult life so she could follow her dreams, she just spent it. Her first purchase was a Louis Vuitton handbag, and that was pretty much how she continued. She bought luxury cars, holidays, and even plastic surgery. It didn't take long before her crazy lifestyle stopped being fun. She said she began to feel depressed and very lonely. Luckily, she could move back in with her mom and try to get her life back on track. Her mom had been pretty clever and had made sure she put some of Jane's winnings into a savings account. So Jane still had some of her millions. And like Callie, she also campaigns to get the minimum legal age for playing the lottery changed. She says she was just too young to handle it. Jane and Callie might be right. Maybe teenagers don't have the maturity to manage that much cash. But our next winner proves that adults can be pretty irresponsible too. Number 7. Keith Go. Keith Go was 58 when he won the lottery. He was a happily married baker when he hit the UK National Lottery jackpot. He went home with winnings equal to $12 million. He could have retired with that money, but instead, he decided to spend it. All he wanted to do was drive fast cars, bet tons of cash on horse racing, spend time in his private executive box at Aston Villa Football Club, and drink loads of alcohol. That's when the real problem started. Tragically, his alcohol addiction finally got so bad that his wife was forced to leave him. That wasn't an easy decision. They loved each other, and splitting up really hurt them both. Before Keith won the lottery, they had been looking forward to retiring and living a peaceful life together. Sadly, soon after his wife left, Keith passed away due to a heart attack. Most people are pretty sure he died of a broken heart. Keith isn't the only lottery winner to die as a result of what he chose to do with his money. But this next story is much weirder. Number 6. Justin Ryder. Justin Ryder's lottery win wasn't as big as most people on this list. He only got $600,000, but he wasn't worried. To him, that was just his chance to afford his ultimate dream. Don't even try to guess what it was. It's too crazy. Justin had watched the classic Austin Powers film Goldmember, and it had given him an idea. He wanted a gold member of his own. So he went out and spent his lottery winnings on some gold paint. And when he got home, he happily dipped his nether regions into it. Then he just went on with his life as normal, glad that he achieved his dream. But it wasn't long before he realized something didn't feel right. So he went back to the store and bought another tin of paint. This time, he chose the more expensive option, which was colored with real gold. But weirdly, he chose not to wash off the first coat before redipping. That was his big mistake. The first pot of paint he'd bought was lead-based paint, and the toxic ingredient was slowly absorbing into his bloodstream. Sadly, he was found dead soon after. The cause of death was lead poisoning. He's not the only lottery winner who didn't do enough research before spending his winnings. Here's another one that made a big mistake by not reading the fine print. Number 5. John McGinnis. Back in 1997, John McGinnis was working as a hospital porter when he hit the UK National Lottery jackpot. His winnings were equal to about $16.4 million, which was a ton of cash back in the 90s. He was pretty generous with his winnings, but he also used some to buy luxuries for himself. But he wasn't spending too wildly, definitely not enough to go broke. He decided to spend some of his fortune on his biggest passion, football. So he bought a whole team. It cost him $4.9 million. That's a lot of cash, but he still had loads left, except for one mistake. He had no idea that by buying the team, he was accepting personal responsibility for their debts. Within 12 years, the team's debts had eaten through every cent John had won, plus his own personal savings he'd earned before winning the lottery. He tried to follow his passion, but ended up broke instead. There's no shortage of lottery winners like John, who accidentally picked up a really bad deal. Here's another British winner who made a bad British choice. Number 4. John Roberts. John Roberts was so poor before winning the lottery that he was living in government housing in Scotland because he couldn't afford to pay rent. We can only imagine what it must have felt like to suddenly win over $5 million. Unfortunately, he didn't really know what to do with all that cash, so he started buying any luxury item he could dream of. But that wasn't his biggest mistake. One day, two of his friends came to him with a business deal. They easily convinced him to invest. John loved the idea of going into business with friends, except they weren't really his friends. Sadly, they'd lied about the investment, and they took off with the last of John's money. Just 3 years after his big win, he was broke and living in a mobile home. It's definitely true, you gotta be careful when choosing your friends. Here's another lottery winner who found that out the hard way. Number 3. Marie Holmes. Marie Holmes was a single mom who was working 3 jobs to put food on the table. Then, in 2015, she got lucky when her North Carolina Powerball ticket won her a whopping $188 million. That was her share of a larger $564 million jackpot that was split between 3 winners. Her problem started straight away when her family accused her of stealing the ticket. They'd said Marie's mom was actually the one who chose the numbers. It turned out they were right. Marie thought it was a quick pick ticket, but her mom had carefully chosen the numbers for her. But luckily for Marie, her mom said she wanted her to have the ticket. After that, Marie's life only got worse. She tried to do something good by giving money to her church, but the priest sued her for not giving them as much as she'd said at the start. Then she started spending way too much cash, and she kept having to bail her heroin trafficker boyfriend out of prison. Brace yourself. The cash she spent on his bail added up to a mind-blowing $21 million. Crazy, right? It didn't work. He still got a prison sentence in the end. You'd think he would at least be grateful, but he later sued her from prison when she sold some of the expensive gifts she bought him. She's basically broke these days. Marie was betrayed by a lot of people. She clearly didn't deserve to be sued for generously giving people money, but this next winner did the opposite and caused her own problems. Number 2. Tanya Lynn Dickerson. This story started in Waffle House. The group of waitresses who worked there had become pretty close over the years, and they decided they would buy some lottery tickets together. The idea was that each one would buy a ticket, and if any of the tickets won, they'd split the winnings between them. It was a nice thought, even if none of them expected to win. But they were wrong. One of the waitresses checked her ticket the next day and realized it was worth $10 million. There was just one problem. Tanda was the holder of the winning ticket, and she decided she didn't want to share. Obviously, the other waitresses were pretty unhappy about that. Not only had they lost out on their money, but they had also been betrayed by someone they thought was their friend. So, they got together and sued Tanda. Unfortunately, they lost the case, and Tanda got away with all the cash. By then, the boss from Waffle House had heard what she'd done. He couldn't believe she treated her friends like that and got away with it. So he tried to get some justice for the waitresses. He sued Tanda, saying the waitress had promised to buy him a new truck if they'd won. The case went all the way to Supreme Court, but Tanda eventually won again. She'd nearly got away with it, but then she slipped up. Tanda decided to protect her money by opening a corporation. That would have been safe, except that she gifted shares of the corporation to her family. That was a big mistake because she didn't realize those shares qualified for gift tax. The IRS came after her when they realized the tax hadn't been paid, and she was forced to hand over $1 million. So none of her friends got the share of the money, but at least she had to pay something. She's not even the only lottery winner who was meant to share the cash but tried to take it all for herself. The last winner on our list got what was coming to her though. Number 1. Denise Rossi. Denise Rossi got super lucky one day when she hit the lottery jackpot. She won $1.3 million. That's pretty amazing news. So you'd think the first thing she would have done is tell her husband. After all, they've been married for 25 years. But she had other plans. She kept her win a secret, and instead of celebrating with her husband, Thomas, she asked for a divorce. She said later she didn't want him to get any of the money. She just wanted it all for herself and was happy to break up their marriage to get her way. But it didn't work. During her divorce proceedings, someone found out what she'd done, and that information really counted against her. According to the law, not disclosing the lottery win counted as fraud. In the end, she was ordered to pay all of her winnings to her now ex-husband. All these winners missed out on changing their lives one way or another, but it doesn't have to be that way. Take a look at our list of the smartest lottery winners in the world to see how to handle your lottery winnings the right way.